Carlos Alcaraz just ended a 5-month silence, and the way he chose to do it is about to blow up in his face. 5 months out, 0 matches. And when he finally walked back onto a tennis court, he didn't pick somewhere quiet to shake off the rust. He picked Arthur Ashe Stadium, mixed doubles, standing next to Serena Williams, the biggest possible stage, for a match that technically doesn't even count toward the tournament he's trying to defend. By the time you finish this video, you'll understand exactly why the person defending him made an argument nobody, not the critics, not the fans, probably not even Alcaraz himself, saw coming. Here's who we're talking about, because the scale of this matters. Alcaraz isn't easing back in as some forgotten journeyman nobody's watching. He's the defending US Open champion, a 7-time Grand Slam winner. World number 2. He hadn't played a single competitive match since April. A right wrist injury had already wiped out his French Open, his Wimbledon title defense, and every hard-court Masters event on the road into New York. 5 months of complete silence, broken without warning. His actual first match back wasn't a closed-door practice set. It was Fan Week. Cameras everywhere. 2 of the biggest names tennis has ever produced sharing a court, because Serena Williams was making her own first US Open appearance in 4 years, standing right beside him. Within seconds of that pairing walking onto Arthur Ashe, the criticism started. Fast, loud. It hasn't slowed down since. Before we get into any of that, here's exactly what happened, because none of what comes next makes sense until you know precisely what did and didn't take place. Alcaraz and Williams opened with a win over doubles specialists Aaron Routliffe and Lloyd Glasspool, 5-3, 4-1. 2 days later, it was over. A quarterfinal loss to Belinda Bencic and Flavio Cobolli, 5-4-4, 4-1. 1 win, 1 loss. A quarterfinal exit in an exhibition-style event with 0 bearing on his actual title defense. That's the entire result. Nothing more, nothing less. Remember that because it's about to get buried under 2 very different accusations. Accusation number 1, he gambled with a wrist that still isn't proven. This is the exact same wrist that just erased 5 months of his season. Every outlet covering his recovery flagged how careful his team had been. Tournament after tournament skipped, purely to protect it. So when the very first thing he did with that wrist wasn't gentle practice hitting, but live competitive points in a packed stadium, the question wrote itself. Why risk it here? Why not save every last ounce of that wrist for the tournament that matters most? Fair question. A wrist serious enough to erase 3 surfaces of a season is serious enough that any unnecessary strain on it deserves real scrutiny. Accusation number 2, and this is the one that actually stings. Some critics didn't stop at physical risk, they went straight for motive. The theory, playing high-profile mixed doubles with the most famous name in the sport's history inside a made-for-television, sponsor-friendly showcase, wasn't preparation at all. It was a marketing obligation wearing a headband. Critics pointed at the cameras, the crossover star power, the way the entire spectacle pulled attention away from the actual singles draw, and landed on a verdict. Alcaraz wasn't out there for himself. He was out there for partners, for broadcasters, for the brand. Some went even further, predicting it would catch up with him, that he'd burned unnecessary risk on a match that didn't count, and it would end in an early singles withdrawal. Notice what that accusation is really saying. Not, he made a mistake. Something colder. His own comeback wasn't actually his. What makes this even harder to wave off? Alcaraz didn't deny how rough it looked. After the opening win, he admitted it himself. Everyone could see how nervous he was. He double faulted on the very first point, and after nearly 5 months away, he'd almost forgotten what it felt like to step on court at all. That's not a PR team softening the story for him. That's a 7-time major champion telling you, completely unprompted, that it wasn't smooth. The eye test backed him up too. His serve was visibly slower than usual, and there were stretches in both matches where Williams looked like she was the one carrying the partnership. By this point, both accusations are standing on solid ground. A fragile wrist, visible rust, a sponsor-friendly spectacle. A player admitting in his own words that it didn't feel like just another match, which is exactly the moment somebody who's actually lived through a Grand Slam campaign decided to step in. And what she said isn't the defense anyone was bracing for. Former British number 1 and world number 4 Johanna Konta went on Eurosport and said flatly that she doesn't understand the criticism at all. But watch what she does next. because it is not how a normal defense goes. She doesn't fight the sponsor accusation. She doesn't deny the hype, the cameras, the commercial angle. She agrees with almost all of it. Then she says something that flips the entire argument on its head. I don't see anything wrong with analyzing it from that perspective. Read that again. The critic's own weapon, that this was about brand, hype, image, and Kanta's response is, so what if it is? She isn't done there either. Underneath the hype argument, she makes a completely different case, one that has nothing to do with strategy, risk management, or sponsorship at all. Her actual read on Alcaraz is that he plays without inhibitions, not chasing a milestone, not performing under pressure to prove anything to anyone. Genuinely, simply enjoying being allowed back on a tennis court after 5 months of not being able to. She points out he's already on pace to challenge the greatest players who've ever picked up a racket, so one mixed doubles run, win or lose, was never going to make or break that legacy. What struck her watching him, she said, was the freedom in it. A player who looked happy just to be competing again, whether or not it was his sharpest tennis. Sit with that for a second, because once you do, both accusations start to collapse. The physical risk argument assumed Alcaraz was gambling with a fragile wrist for no good reason. Kanta's read says the opposite happened. He chose the lowest risk format available, specifically so he could get back to competing before the full weight of a Grand Slam draw crashed down on him. The sponsor motive argument assumed there had to be a cynical explanation buried underneath the surface. Kanta's answer is almost aggressively simple. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe he wanted to play tennis again and he was finally allowed to. Commercial appeal and genuine joy aren't opposites. They just happen to land on the same court in the same week. People calling this a red flag are reading a rusty, underprepared performance like a crisis. It isn't one. By Kanta's read, it's simply what it looks like when a player who's been locked out of his own sport for 5 months finally gets it back, without needing to pretend he's already sharp enough to justify being there. One detail almost nobody puts in the headline: every single he's going to withdraw prediction was made before he'd played 1 point of the tournament he was supposedly jeopardizing. Not during it, not after it, before it had even started. 4 days out from his opening singles match, Alcaraz has shown no sign of pulling out of anything. To be clear, none of this guarantees the wrist survives 2 full weeks of best-of-5 tennis. Nobody, including his own team, has ever claimed that. 5 months away is 5 months away, and the real test still hasn't happened. But there's a massive gap between this carries real uncertainty going forward and this was a reckless, cynical decision built entirely around sponsors. The first one is just sport. The second one is the version of the story that spread the fastest. And it's the version that fell apart the moment someone who's actually lived through this looked past the headline. What actually happened here? Alcaraz walked back onto a tennis court next to one of the greatest players the sport has ever produced, in front of a crowd that turned an exhibition doubles match into one of the most watched moments of the entire lead-up week. He admitted exactly how nervous it felt. By his own account, that nervousness lasted all of a couple of games before Serena Williams made it easy for him. Was it strategy? Was it sponsorship? Or, like Kanta says, was it simply a player who's happiest with a racket in his hand, finally getting it back? The scoreboard reads the same either way. Criticism like this always has its loud, immediate moment, the way it always does in the first 48 hours of a story like this. But the only thing left that actually settles anything is the part no doubles scoreline can predict. What he does when the tournament that actually counts finally begins.